All right. Well, we're joined today by Joe Levy. How you doing, Joe? Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I'm well, thank you. I am surrounded by bits and pieces of leaflets from the election campaign, so I'm in the thick of it.
Yeah, yeah. We're definitely looking forward to chatting with you about that, Joe. If you don't mind, really quickly introducing yourself, your name, your pronouns, and where people can find you on the World Wide Web.
Yeah, so I'm Joe, and I'm a Twitch streamer and many other things, but I'm a Twitch streamer under the name of Joe J. Levy. My pronouns are he, him. I am based in Exeter, which is in deepest, darkest Devon in the UK. Yeah, I'm a variety streamer. I do all kinds of stuff. I do lots of singing, and I play games badly. I emphasize the badly because I'm not a pro gamer at all. And I'm currently training to be a classical singer in my spare time as well. So yeah.
Really?
Yes,
I didn't
indeed.
know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, very exciting. So yeah, well, I don't want to work in admin anymore. Let's put it that way.
Wonderful.
So,
All right.
yeah.
We'll talk maybe more about those lessons. I'm a trained vocalist, and my partner gives voice lessons all day. That's her job. And it's just so nice to be joined by someone with such a wonderful accent, and I'm going to grift as much of your intelligence just from that accent alone. Really good to be with you today, Joe. One thing I love to do is talk about how I know our guest, and we know each other because of Twitch Sings.
Yes.
Twitch Sings, sadly, it's gone. Rest in peace, Twitch Sings. Yeah, Twitch Sings, we like sang a duet together, and for people who don't know, it's pretty much like an online game, and it was like karaoke, but you could do duets with people, and it was really a lot of fun. I remember we did a duet, and it just went from there, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Boulevard of Broken Dreams, if I remember correctly. I can pretty much pinpoint the song. I can tell you that much. Yeah. No, I love Twitch Sings. It was fantastic because the community around it was, for the most part, incredibly wholesome and lovely and very accepting. So yeah, it was lovely. I love Twitch Sings. Miss it dearly.
I do too, but now that it's gone, I walk alone. I walk alone. All right, Joe. So what we get to do now is ask you a little bit about yourself. If you want to talk more about what you do on your channel, on your Twitch channel, if you want to talk more about what you do in your professional life, or anything else leftist related. I know you also got the election going on. I don't know if you're doing anything personally with that other than just voting. Yeah. Why don't we go from there?
So, funnily enough, my relationship with politics and Twitch and my professional life are deeply intertwined to each other, because I've worked at Exeter University as an administrator for about 6 years now, because I graduated from there. And the reason I decided to stay in Exeter working was because I got involved in the local Green Party, and I was very impressed with their local campaigning, taking on like a city council that's very dominated by one party, Labour, who'd been quite complacent and weren't really listening to residents' voices, and were doing a lot of like things like anti-homelessness type stuff. And I was just not happy with it. So I stuck around in Exeter. And then I got mega involved in politics. I got so involved that I ran for Parliament twice. I ran for City Council 3 or 4 times. I ran 3 election campaigns in 1 year. And we got our first councillor elected in 2019, and that was great. General election happened. And without going into too much detail, for various reasons, I had an incident basically where I was confronted by a Nazi for my Jewish heritage. And that was taken to court this year. So it's taken over a year for that to be resolved. But yeah, so long story short, I needed a break from politics, and the pandemic hit at the same time. And I realized how much I depended on politics, and that my biggest lesson was that I think if you depend solely on one thing in life, you can burn out so easily, and having multiple facets to your life is really important. So I got into Twitch, and I got into singing, and so my relationship with politics, I would say, is a lot healthier now. So I'm back involved in campaigning again, and this time we are trying to elect 3 new councillors to Exeter City Council, as well as another one to the County Council. And this is really significant because it's really about having a balance. I mean, we have a very archaic voting system in this country, which means that it is quite hard to get that balance. So it's taken a lot of work to get to this stage. So my Twitch career has like blossomed from me looking after myself a little bit more and starting to indulge in creative things instead of just kind of, it's great to help other people and do things that you believe in, but you can only sustain yourself with that if you look after yourself. So that is a really like a nutshell of like the last 6 years, basically. So yeah,
that's fascinating. Just learned a lot about you. I didn't realize you ran. You said you ran for parliament. You ran for city council. Is that right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did quite well actually in the 2019 general election. I got just under 5,000 votes, and I got a lot of media coverage because there was all these sort of deals about Unite to Remain and whatever you think of the whole Brexit debate, and it was about trying to campaign against Brexit because I'm very much an internationalist. I'm not a fan of nation states and borders, and while the EU isn't perfect, I didn't like this idea of the UK closing in. So that was part of my motivation. And it's quite the challenge we have now is obviously we are quite isolated in many ways ideologically from the rest of the world. So it's a tough time to be in left politics in the UK for sure. So, yeah.
I think the left is wandering everywhere. We don't know. At least in a lot of the Western world, it just seems to be wandering. Just we don't know what to do. Yeah. I ask so many people. Of course, we have the questionnaire coming up later. I asked folks, an influential leftists they'd like to meet, and they're like, yeah, I'd like to meet XYZ. And I'd ask them what the fuck to do because no one knows what to do. Yeah. We're all wandering.
Yeah, it does feel like that for sure. I mean, I think one of the things that I feel is that there are a lot of parallels to be drawn from history. I think society across the world is in a period of sort of chaos. And if you look at like the end of the Roman Empire, for example, when you get out of that chaos is you get extremes of wealth and extremes of poverty. You get extraordinary cultural phenomena. You get really interesting things coming out of it. But what we have yet to do as a species is work out how we stop that chaos turning into disaster and pulling everyone down with it. And that's our challenge this century, is to not let that catastrophe pull us down and actually see hope and positivity in the future instead of just embracing disaster. So yeah, but it's a big ask.
All right, well, Joe, I'd love to ask a little bit, just a little bit more about you, a little bit personally, like your hobbies, like what keeps you busy when you're not thinking about politics, hanging out on Twitch. Yeah.
So I mean, for so long, like politics has taken up quite a lot of my life, and Twitch is now like, I would say, is a big center. But I spend a lot of time singing because singing is my sort of main passion, and I want it to become my career. I'm actually training to be a singing teacher now because I only started singing properly last year. I only started having lessons a year ago, but my teacher said, "Oh, would you be interested in developing that and actually becoming a teacher yourself?" And I was thinking, this is such a great opportunity, and to have a teacher who's willing to do that. So that's very exciting. And I'm very much like a musician who plays by ear, so I'm trying to get to grips with theory because I'm not that technical. I'm more of like what instinctively sounds good. And for classical, there's very strict rules about what you can and can't do. You have some choices, but there's certain frameworks. I do a lot of writing. I write short stories. I've read them out on my Twitch channel before. Like they're like ghost stories. I love like psychological thrillers, ghost stories. I find like they're really useful ways of getting through trauma and stuff, is channeling into a good ghost story. And I do a bit of painting, cooking, baking, gardening. I'm like a sort of 1940s housewife mixed with like a sort of late 70s protester kind of personality. There's a chef in the UK called Delia Smith, and I think if I were ever to do drag, it would be Psychedelia Smith would be my act.
You better lock that down.
It works if you know who Delia Smith is. If you don't, then it's kind of just a random name. But there we go.
You're gonna have to lock down that drag name because that's fucking brilliant.
If someone else wants to own it though, and
Yeah.
then go for it, I will happily provide them with notes. You know, if I'm not going to go for that, then someone else can.
Dealey Smith right here.
Yeah, but then you need to add a bit more,
Right.
like, because Delia Smith's quite traditional, sort of like, you know, chef and like a cook, and I'm not very. Some parts of me are immensely traditional, and other parts of me are far from it. So yeah.
She looks like the traditional American Karen.
Yeah, it's that hairstyle. It's kind of waterfall at the front and fireworks at the back, isn't it? So
perfect description.
It's kind of sort of curtains at the front and the Iron Throne behind. So there we go. Yeah, there's so many different. Yeah, there's so many different references you could make to that hairstyle.
Hilarious. All right, Joe. Let's keep going. I get to dig into the interview here, and I'd love to ask you more about. You probably started touching on some of these things. They'll probably thread into your running for parliament and city council, your political action that you've taken part in. Let's talk about, Joe, your leftward bound journey, a pathway to the left or left adjacentism. You don't have to be, identify as left. If you want to self-identify your ideology or your politics, feel free to do so. Otherwise, let's start the chat about your pathway leftward.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if I was going to put a word on it, although I'm not always fond of using specific terms, but eco-socialist would be the closest to where I sit, really, which is ultimately a mixture of localist and state intervention, where you give people a certain amount of autonomy, but you protect people. I think I was always destined to head in that direction. I don't think I was always. I didn't always have strong political views, but I've always had strong views. But I think my upbringing and my circumstances very much drove me that way. So one, my dad's family being an immigrant family from North Africa, and a Jewish family. And so the mixture of like anti-Semitism and also like different kinds of discrimination within immigrant communities as well. My mum was a barrister for the Crown Prosecution Service, so very like aware of like justice. My mum had been to Rock Against Racism on the march in 1979. My grandma was she was an activist, and when children were fleeing Vietnam during the Vietnam War, she drove around London with like bread and toys and stuff, delivering them. So she very like a family that's very aware of community. So I was brought up into that sphere, and then I was very environmentally conscious as a child as well. Like I ran like a campaign when I was like 14 to save the orangutan, because I was really concerned about palm oil. And when Facebook groups were a thing that were like before pages, like I set up a Facebook group for that. And then I think because I was the first year to pay, so I don't know how much you know, but basically until 2012, tuition fees for like higher education in the UK they did exist, but they were quite a lot lower. And then they jumped from £3,000 a year to £9,000 a year in a single year, and they've been at least that since then. And I was the first cohort to pay that, and I felt very angry, but also I didn't really feel I could go to. I don't know. I just felt so cross, and there was such a sense of injustice. And so I just started spending a lot more time around activists. And at that point, the Green Party was growing particularly fast by the time like sort of 2014, 15. And it was drawing a lot of left-wing activists from Labour. So a lot of the people I was spending time with were people who felt that Labour was too centrist, and they were coming to the Greens. So when I didn't know much about politics, the people I was surrounded by the most were people on the left. And factoring in my experiences of the world as a gay man who went to a Catholic school but had a Jewish father, I basically was exposed to like this really, and also friends who lived in huge houses and friends who lived in poverty. Like I basically just saw the world and was like, well, this is shit. So but I'm not going to just observe. I'm going to take part in it. And yeah, I think ever since then, like it's just been a sort of I've never doubted that for one moment. It's sort of renewed, and my parents are now members of the Green Party as well, and they do like campaigning and stuff as well. And yeah, my family generally has come along with me on that interesting expedition through politics.
Yeah. All right, Joel. Lots of important things along the way there. I wonder if we can just dig in at all anymore, if we can follow up at all with this. Want to make sure we exhaust this portion of our chat here. Any other aspects of politics or of leftist theory or of leftist thinking? Anything in history? What like intellectually convinced you that, you know, or showed you that you were moving left? What were the light bulbs that were going off in your brain?
I think so. It's actually so. I think some people it's through theory, it's through reading. I mean, some of that for me was true because I studied archaeology and anthropology as my degree, and I think there was a lot of extent to which I witnessed through studying the destruction that British anthropologists had done in a colonial context. And that really angered me. To be honest, off the top of my head, I can't remember the names of them. But to be fair, I'm not sure I want to remember too much the really crappy ones. But also through archaeology, you kind of see the destruction of societies and their development, and you see different ways of communities forming. And so I saw kind of the world in a very different frame to how I'd done before my degree, and also through music as well. Like I really engage like that. I feel there's a real dearth of popular protest music in existence today compared to say the 80s. And my favorite singer is Kirsty MacColl. And on the surface, a lot of it, I think a lot of people won't even know who she is, but a lot of her music doesn't seem political. But then when you start to listen, it's a commentary on life in Thatcher's Britain. And she was part of the Red Wedge of musicians, including people like Billy Bragg, who... Yes. I've seen Billy Bragg live. In fact, I was at a gig of his when he was the person who told me that Nelson Mandela had died, which is a really, really interesting moment to say. Like, you remember where you were. I was at a Billy Bragg gig, like really quite powerful sometimes hearing it from. But yeah, so that era of music, because that was my mum's era of music, like the early 80s. So that really shaped me. So listening to them go after Thatcher, go after the British state, and kind of, you know, this old colonial like empire model, I just felt I didn't want to be part of that. And I think as soon as people said, well, that makes you left wing, I was like, well, good, because I don't want to be the opposite of that. I wouldn't say I'm as learned as some people in terms of like actual, you know, theory, and I'm not, and you know, I probably should have read more, but I sort of quite like that I've come to my own conclusions, and it somehow has aligned quite nicely with a lot of my friends who are, you know, they've done a lot more reading than me. And I've definitely, I think I've approached it from like a very localist perspective as well, trying to apply some of these things in local government and local politics. And that's been exciting, because trying to translate it in ways that are really tangible to people in their day-to-day lives is the goal, so that we can get people on board. If we can turn these theories into real action, then we can affect great change, which is keeping me going.
Awesome. So along the way, music, amongst other things, the Red Wedge, that's a new term for me. Billy Bragg, I'm familiar with Billy Bragg because I love Wilco, and they did a couple albums together. I love Billy Bragg. And you discovered along the way sort of the harm of the Thatcher era, the Thatcher Reagan era. You saw the harm of colonialism. And you realize you're left.
Absolutely. And I think there's another part as well, which is, and I think this is a sort of a generational thing as much as anything, is that I grew up with Blair as the Prime Minister for most of my childhood. And that I think is really I think that's really significant, because I think that it means that not, because I grew up with Blair as the Prime Minister, but then went to university when the Tories and the Lib Dems were in power, which means that the three main parties just were not an option to me, and I had to think a bit outside the box. And some people came back to Labour and they formed a much bigger movement. But I think that I've always felt that diversity is important in politics, and that it's unfortunately it's the electoral system we have that creates problems. But I felt that my place was with the eco-socialist angle of that, and I felt that the Green Party was my natural home. And I know many people who found their natural homes elsewhere. I think, and I still feel with conviction that the Green Party is the right place for me. Whereas I know many people where it, depending on who's leader, depending on who's in control of Labour, they've never been sure. And I really feel for them, because fighting for that left identity and the link between the Labour movement and the Labour Party, it's becoming increasingly fractured. And so, yeah, and I think Tony Blair has so much to blame for that, because he carved out this centrist identity, and that's what I grew up knowing. Whereas I think previous generations had a very different. They had different perceptions of Labour and what it meant. So it depends on what you grew up with, I guess.
Okay, Joe. Lovely. Joe, one of the things we're doing here is we're planting seeds, the ideas we want to return to the conversation, and we'll see, what's growing. And then, next time we have you back, we'll see what's growing. We'll plant some new seeds, and we'll just keep it going. And of course, next time we have you back, we'll pretty much ditch the format here. But the next question in this format for our chat today is the category is #BeBest. If Joe, if you had the chance to maybe go back in time and speak to a younger version of yourself, or, distill your life into maybe some generic life tips for our chat or the replay viewer, or even sort of leftist, sort of inspired life advice, what would you share if given the chance?
I don't know if this is specifically leftist, but I think it actually would probably help the movement at large, which is that done is better than perfect. And this is something that I learned from a few friends of mine who they won a Green Party council seat in the northeast of England in a very heavily working class, historically Labour for decades ward. And they're the kindest, most gentle people you can know, but they are excellent politicians and excellent activists. And this idea of done is better than perfect, I think the trouble is that because we are it feels like we are always fighting against a tide of right-wing activism, of fascism in some cases. And it's incredibly tiring doing that, and we hold ourselves to incredibly high standards, but we don't necessarily hold other people to the same high standard. We push ourselves so far, and I think accepting that the work that you do can be good enough will motivate yourself to survive for longer, because none of this is easy. It's a long road, and I've been doing this for 6 years, and I know that some people have been campaigning for decades, and that you survive that by accepting that you will never get it right all the time. And that's actually something that I've come to terms with. Having a year away from politics and then coming back into it is actually also accepting that you can be agnostic about stuff sometimes as well. You don't have to have an opinion on absolutely everything. That the ability to just step back and go, this person can talk and have their viewpoint, and I can sit and mull it over. I don't have to react, because it's very, I've seen so many mental health problems emerge from political activism, including my own. And it's really healthy to be able to kind of detach yourself sometimes, even if it's something you really believe in strongly, just to give yourself sustenance. That sustenance is looking after yourself and accepting your own limitations. So I always say done is better than perfect, because my friends Elaine and David up in the northeast, they always say that. So I repeat that to myself every day so that I don't burn out again.
Excellent advice.
Thank you.
Done is better than perfect.
Yeah. I'm going to have it written. I'm going to write it somewhere, maybe frame it.
It's beautiful. All right. So that brings us to the next portion of our chat, the leftist inquisition.
Ooh.
Everyone loves it. No one hates it. You could skip any question for any reason.
Okay.
And I will not be offended. I don't care. These are just get to know you questions. First question is, do you have a favorite word?
Oh, a favorite word. It's actually a French word because that's my second language.
Yes.
It's nénuphar, and it means water lily, and it's just a lovely word. It's very simple. Nénuphar. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, thank you.
Points for originality. Haven't heard that one yet.
No,
do you have a least?
Might not hear it again. Least favorite word.
Yes,
Ooh,
Joe,
least favorite word. Oh, that's a tricky one. Austerity. Oh, I hate that one.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, oh, look, we're tightening our belts. And it's like, no, you're not. You're just making poor people suffer and the rich don't have to do anything. I hate the word austerity.
I won't say it then. Joe, do you have a favorite drug, a favorite vice, or guilty pleasure? Or if you like, you can name one of each.
I don't have a favorite drug because my body produces enough chemicals to last me an entire day, mainly adrenaline. I don't know. I don't think I have a guilty pleasure because I try not to feel guilty about stuff. I kind of like I kind of don't like you see, I love watching bad films, but objective you can't be there's such a thing as an objectively bad film, really.
Yeah.
But but I wouldn't call that a guilty pleasure because I feel like we have too much guilt in our lives. Let's not add that to. So I just have pleasures, and you can read into that however you like.
Joe, do you have a favorite sound or a sound or noise that you love?
I love the sound of like wind through trees. Like it's very calming. Like I grew up in a city and I still live in a city, but like I just escape when I go around trees. I know that's such a cliche of green. It's like, yeah, Joe, you're tree hugger. I'm like, well, yes, unfortunately that is factually correct. So there we go.
I haven't heard wind through trees yet. Well done. We're about 70 interviews deep here. Joe, yeah. How about a sound or noise that you don't love, or maybe you even hate it?
Boris Johnson's voice. I can't. I have to turn anything where he speaks. I just have to turn it off. I can read like a transcript maybe, and I can tolerate that in that I hate it, but I can at least read it. But I cannot listen to him. It just annoys me so much. So yeah, I spare myself that.
That guy's interesting.
That's a very polite way of putting it.
That guy is.
He's the embodiment of entitlement.
Yes. Okay. Now, you mentioned your family's from Northern Africa. The next question involves cheese. If you were born or spent a good deal of time in France or Wisconsin, you get more than one answer. Everyone else gets one answer unless you break the rules, Joe, in which case I can't stop you. What's your favorite cheese? Yeah.
Firstly, I'm vegan, so it has to be it has to be a vegan cheese. Okay. I have recently tried a vegan camembert, and I was very impressed because I haven't been vegan for more than a few years. Okay. And I was very surprised. It tasted an awful lot, and I even baked it. So before I would always said like a camembert, like brie type cheese, and I'm sticking with that now, just the vegan equivalent. So honestly, I'm so stereotypical Green Party, like it's just painful, and I just accept it now. Like it's like I've said the wind through the trees, and I was vegan living, and all that.
Are like Green Party in the UK? Is what's the equivalent? Like champagne socialists or what? brunch
It,
socialist.
the stereotype is that, but I feel like it's not reflected in the ground. Like that's such the frustrating thing. Like it's like we're seen as really middle class. I am middle class. There's no denying it. But most of the friends I have who are voters and supporters are actually working class, which is quite interesting. So yeah, but I'm thoroughly middle class. You can tell by how posh I sound.
Joe, I'm loving this so far. Do you have an answer to this question, which is the reincarnation question? If you could come back as some other plant or a non-human animal and somehow you were given the choice, what might it be?
Okay, so if we're going with a plant, I would come back as a yew tree because they are incredibly long-lived trees. They're sentinels. They're very they've got many different uses, and they have sort of myths and legends around them. So the oldest trees in the UK are all yew trees. They're beautiful, like creatures, like myself. I was going to say they're quite twisted, but I don't like myself, but that's actually not accurate. So, no. If I was to come back as an animal, that's quite a tough one because I am the kind of person who I see an animal and I just get really excited, just like I'm like a small child. It's a tough one. I'd quite like to be an owl. I think owls are really cool. I've held an owl before. And I got followed to the pub once by an owl. It was just like flying from tree to tree behind me. It was like playing grandmother's footsteps with me, which is an unusual experience. But so, yeah.
You made an owl friend.
Exactly.
It's
yeah.
amazing.
Animals love me. I'm a modern day Snow White. What can I say?
I believe it. I love it. Next up is it's the God question. Yeah. So Joe, if at the end of your life, you go to heaven, and then you're at the pearly gates, and there's God, and then God starts speaking to you, what would you like to hear God say to you?
Only because I've watched The Good Place. Everything is fine.
Everything's fine.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that. Yeah. That's, to be fair, that's in the wisdom of The Good Place. Like that is actually an incredibly, like, you do want someone to say that, like, throughout life. So why not in death be told that everything is fine?
It's sort of a ripoff, though, of Douglas Adams's Hitchhiker's Guide. Don't panic.
For sure.
Yeah, it's totally a ripoff.
But I think don't panic implies that the default is panic, whereas everything is fine is like just breathe. Everything's fine. It like the sounds that the words make as well. Fine is like a soft, whereas panic is a plosive. So it's like so everything's fine is nice and like lilting.
Everything's fine.
Exactly. You say it very calmingly. Yeah, it's.
Thank you. The mic does most of the work.
It does, doesn't it?
Joe, please name an influential leftist, dead or alive, that you'd love to be able to meet, maybe have a hypothetical conversation with, and feel free to take that any direction you like.
Well, I suppose sticking with what I said earlier about music. So, it depends whether you describe her as influential. I would say she was. I just don't think it was really appreciated at the time. Kirsty MacColl, and I would say she was unusual because she's not a left. She's from the same circle as Billy Bragg, but she wasn't. I think a lot of people wouldn't have known that she was a leftist, but so much of what she did in her. So Kirsty MacColl was a singer, and she died tragically in 2000, saving her own children from an oncoming speedboat, which was owned by a billionaire in Mexico, and he got away with only paying £9,000 in damages because he owned pretty much all the supermarkets there. Big businessman, but she throughout her life she did quite a lot of really brilliant things, and she was a fantastic feminist icon as well because she wrote her own songs and defied record labels when they wanted her to fit a certain model. She was a strong environmental activist, and she did a lot of things to promote environmental activism. She was very anti-Thatcher and promoted her. She didn't hide away from her views. And she was just generally regarded widely as a very kind person. And I kind of think that what's influential about that is that I think because she doesn't meet the general population stereotype of what a leftist popular figure looks like. I think Billy Bragg is fantastic, but I think a lot of people have defined their image around protest music and celebrity in relation to politics around people like him. And it's great to have, especially at that time, a woman who is such a significant voice. And I think, to be honest, I think it's more for there's a couple of generations that have been influenced by her, which is the people who were in their teens and 20s when she was making most of her music, and their children. And there's like a great comfort. And I would love to have met her, because I just think that she had like such strong views and passions, but she is an incredibly creative person, and again, a very hospitable person. And so, sometimes when you're anxious, you kind of feel anxious about wanting to talk to someone because you worry about almost treading on eggshells. But she is someone who I think I would have felt very at ease talking to because of the way that she came across. So yeah.
Joe, can you help me out? What's the name? I couldn't actually find...
Do you want me to type it in your chat?
Just type it or spell it out for me. Yeah. And then I'll look it up. I'm trying to make sure I'm exactly sure who you're talking about.
I've just popped it in.
McCall.
Yeah, she did a lot of songs that a lot of people might not know as her. Some of them were just really witty, like songs. But she also, like, there was one called Free World, which was just like a criticism of Thatcher, basically.
This is crazy. This is a picture of her at the Double Door in Chicago, which is just down the block from where I lived.
Oh, that's really funny.
They actually just shut down the Double Door. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No. But yeah. I mean, I think she.
Steve Lillywhite was her husband? Holy shit! Yeah. Oh, that's pretty based.
She wrote a whole album about the divorce. So. Oh. Yeah. And Tracy Ullman's first, like her singing career, most of Tracy Ullman's songs were written by Kirsty MacColl. So
really,
well, they don't know. I don't know if you know. They don't know, but they don't know about us. Okay. And they've never heard of love. That was a Kirsty MacColl song, which she wrote on the fly in like half an hour when she was like 19. So Tracy Ullman's music career was driven very much by Kirsty MacColl. But like, I think the thing is, like, initially she had that kind of particular style which would have gone down the Tracy Ullman route, but I think she wanted to be a bit different, and that's why she ended up more with the Billy Bragg kind of, because she was in a punk band before, because the time that she appeared, her first song was released in 1979, which like punk purists will say is like the only year that punk ever existed.
Of course.
But of course, obviously that's not quite how it works. But that obviously was a very politically intense period in this country. And so a lot of music that comes out of that era, including hers, either goes the complete opposite and tries to shield people from it, or exposes the reality of it. And she did actually quite a good job of mixing those things together. So, yeah.
All right. Then next, I'd love to ask you, Joe, do you have a favorite leftist book or author? Define leftist any way you like. We've been doing that all day.
Oh, that's a really interesting one. I'm trying to. I would say, I mean, The Road to Wigan Pier by George Orwell was very influential for me, because I started to look at it, because its examination of like industrial society at the time. And I think because I like I said, I grew up in a middle class, like a comfortable but not wealthy background, like, but I didn't have any exposure to like the life that was described here. And I think that was a really valuable book for me to read. And then it looked at the future of, like, towards the end, it starts to look at the future of humanity and stuff. And it's quite like, it's a real mixture of stuff, but it definitely has stuck with me. I think I kind of read it almost because it was on a list of books when I went to do A-level English. And I thought I just picked it out of thin air, but actually it's one of the ones on that list that I'm exceptionally glad that I did, because I think about it now and how many times stuff from the book has rung true in real life. So yeah, like the thing is, I'm one of those people who I think my introduction to like leftist activism and culture has been much more practical. So there's very few examples of like where I've brought reading into that, but there are a few, and sometimes I find sometimes goes into like, so I like to try and now that I have greater awareness, sometimes I reread stuff and I see things that I didn't see before. Sometimes you find with writers that you realize they were quite horrifyingly right wing. You just didn't realize that this is, as a child or something, but or they've got very particular agendas. But but that's the one book that sticks out in my head amongst a few that I would say is a particular favorite of mine.
All right, Joe. Lastly, streamer tips. Do you have any tips for content creators, be them streamers or others? They could be tips for beginners. It could be tips for the advanced.
So, I've got a few actually, because
Sure.
I've just passed my 1 year of streaming, which is exciting. I did that.
Congrats.
Was not this Saturday just gone, but the one before. Thank you. Yeah, and it's
Me
been
too.
really. Oh really?
Oh, actually, no. Mine was. Wait.
Well, the actual anniversary was.
Mine was the 24th.
So my actual anniversary was the 22nd. But I celebrated on the Saturday because I was like, do you know what? I'm going to stream for 16 hours and see what happens. And a Saturday is the easiest day to do that. I live alone, so I've got not much else to do. Woo! And I was like, do you know what? I need a bit of and I'd want to indulge all the different games I own. So I tried to do as many games as I could with as many different people as I could as well. Yeah. So my tips for streaming. So firstly is there's a couple of practical ones, which is like for equipment, don't buy super expensive stuff before you feel you need to. Like try it out. If you've already got expensive stuff, fine. But like you don't need the most expensive microphone in the world to get started. If you don't have that stuff and just want to try it out, give it a go. And then as you grow, you can find, well, actually it is worth me. But it's like if you're trying it out, it's knowing that you're committed to it. I think some people feel that they have to have the best setup in the world to be successful. But actually I found that I built the community before I started investing in stuff. Your personality and who you are as a human being is more important, and what you want to give people a sense of is that they are welcome and they are part of something, that they feel at home and safe and comfortable. So good ground rules and stuff like that. The other thing is, again, done is better than perfect. So I go back to that all the time. Is this idea that you don't put yourself under pressure to be better, and don't compare yourself to other people. Like we started at roughly the same time, but we've had very different trajectories because we've got different ideas of what we want to do, and there's neither is better nor worse. It's just different, and they both contribute valuably. And I've seen a lot of people, streamers who have got a few viewers and streamers who've got hundreds, who all do the same thing, which is they go, oh, why have I not got more viewers? Why have I, and if it's really important not to think about that and instead focus on just enjoying yourself, having a good time, because ultimately this is a sociable thing that should be fun, and it should reflect you at your best. So if you're feeling stressed or anxious, sometimes maybe decide not to stream. And that's the other thing as well, is placing limits so that you don't push yourself too hard. Like, yes, I did do a 16-hour stream, and yes, I'm an utter hypocrite, but I did that because I felt I could and I wanted to. And I will often take breaks to do stuff. And don't be afraid to share your passions with stuff as well. You don't have to follow what you see as the standard streamer model. Like, bring politics into it, bring art, bring whatever you're passionate about into it. That's like I'm bringing it back at some point, but like I used to do quite a lot of storytelling streams because I write short stories. The reason I'm not doing it at the moment is because I'm still writing another batch of stories. But and again, if that doesn't bring in loads of views, it doesn't matter, because the point is that the people who tune into that will feel valued and they will feel part of it. It's not about size. It's about the value that you give to the people that are there. And Sometimes that's no people, and that's okay. Just have fun and just enjoy yourself and learn to talk to yourself. I'm good at talking to myself already. Like, I do it all the time. Now my internal monologue is just an external monologue. So, yeah.
I love that, Joe. Good stuff in there. Really excellent advice.
Thank you. I do
Thank
try.
you.
It's some of it I've learnt the hard way.
Yeah.
You go through phases of like imposter syndrome and doubting yourself, and then I think you look at other people who act. And I think for me, I found this because I am very lucky to have the number of followers and the number of viewers I have, and there are obviously people that are bigger streamers than me, but the point is that I have people who have told me that they use what I've got to as like a model. So it would be actually rude of me to then say that what I've got is not enough, because it's saying that those smaller streamers are lesser, and I don't like that. Like their community and their channel is as valuable as one that's 10 times their size or 20 times. It's about what you put into it. So it's important to see the value in whatever size community you have.
It's not how big it is, it's how you use it. I've heard that somewhere else in my life. I can't remember.
If I had a penny for every time I had to use that phrase.
Joe, we've come to the end of the Inquisition, and I'm going to skip through the portion where I ask you if you have questions for me, because one of the reasons that we brought you on today is because you reached out to me and you're like, I want to talk to you about what's happening in the UK and the elections. And I'm like, well, I want to make sure that we do this before the elections, and then we'll have something to follow up on. Absolutely. So we were doing a little homework before the stream, learning about the elections in UK and Wales and Scotland, and you're on the ground there, and I figured who best to hear from than someone who can actually spell it out and handle my 5-year-old questions, where you're gonna have to explain it to me like a baby, because I don't understand things sometimes. But there's lots of as I understand, there's English local councils, 143 apparently, that are up for grabs. 5,000 seats.
5,000 different seats, and then which is a record, because it's more than would have been because of COVID. So they've been all rescheduled. So 143 councils, but 5,000 seats. English government is very the governance in the UK is really complicated, because there are so many different systems, and they're used in different places, and they've added more. So where I live, we have got 3 votes, because we are voting for the city council, but we live in a larger county. So the county council, we can vote for a city councillor and a county councillor and a police and crime commissioner. Some places they only have their one councillor to vote for, but they have police and crime commissioner and a metro mayor. Some have a police and crime commissioner and a metro mayor, but not a councillor. Like, basically, there will be multiple different combinations of those different elections going on, and they use different voting systems as well, which makes it even more confusing. So the council elections use first past the post, so whoever gets the most votes wins. London Assembly uses mixed member proportional representation, so half of the seats are constituencies and the other half are like list votes, so it's reallocated according. So that's where the Greens, the Lib Dems, and other small parties do quite well. The directly elected mayors use a first and second preference vote system, as does the London mayoral election. That's
fascinating. We never see that in the United States, like ranked voting, anything like that.
It's usually devolved parts of the country where they've had non-Tory governments in control at some point, is that's how it's got through. The Senedd in Wales, and it's pronounced Senedd, which I discovered. It's like the W is a the sound, Senedd. So that is a proportional. It's a roughly proportional system. So again, you have constituencies, and then you have mixed member. Scottish Parliament, again, half of them up in constituencies, and the other half they use single transferable vote, I believe. So, and then I think police and crime commissioners, I think, is God, this is bad. It's because no one really likes the police and crime commissioner role for the most part, because it wasn't really very popular when it came in. But I'm pretty sure that is I think it's either ranked choice or first and second. But yeah, it's it's basically it's complicated. So I wouldn't blame anyone for not understanding what's going on, because it's a real mess.
Mm-hmm.
National elections use AMS. Okay, there we go. So local use STV, national use okay, that makes sense.
So you're on the ground there, and where are you in the UK? Did you mention? Is it okay if I ask?
Yeah, so I'm in the city of Exeter. So Exeter has had a Labour MP since 1997 in the big sort of tide of MPs, and his majority, Ben Bradshaw, the MP, has stayed broadly the same, broadly big. And in 2010, it was quite close. But since then, Exeter's just drifted leftwards as the city's expanded. And it's got a Labour-run council, and it's had a Labour-run council since 2012, but also had a Labour-run council for most of the time since 95. So it's pretty dominated by Labour. But in 2019, there was quite a significant change, which reflects a national change that was happening more widely, which is that at local elections, and again, these are first past the post elections, that an increasing number of Greens, Independents, and Lib Dems were elected. Now, Lib Dems are centrist for most cases, although you do get local councillors that maybe are a bit better. So like here, the local Lib Dems are actually pretty good, because they're very good at, they're much better on issues like homelessness and on, housing and communities. They're generally better than I would associate the national parties. But basically, what happened in 2019 was that Labour lost all three of the city centre wards. So the way that our wards work is that my council elects in thirds. So there are elections every year. So there are 3 councillors in each ward, and one of them is elected each year for 3 years. Then the county council elections, and then back to the 4-year cycle. It's really hard to get your head around. So how on earth people who are not campaigners in local elections they don't, basically. But in that election, the Green Party won the city centre ward of St David's with jumping from 32% to 55% of the vote, which was, the biggest majority of any candidate in the city. An independent won the ward adjacent to that with 48% from nothing, having never stood before. It was a campaign to protect green spaces. And then the Lib Dems increased their number of councillors. So essentially, we have, like most councils in the UK, are one-party states. So either the Tories or Labour run them, and they've run them for a long time. And that is down to the electoral system, but it's also down to kind of the political arena in the country. Since the Lib Dems went into coalition with the Tories, we've kind of lost a lot of that third party voting, and that's starting to change again. It's now reversing that trend of becoming polarized. We're now seeing more and more smaller parties, independents crop up, which really kind of shows that people ultimately they want a proportional system. Ultimately, that's what most polls show, is that people want a proportional system. But because of local elections they're not national elections, they don't control the government, people are much more willing to vote for other parties. So we're finding in Exeter, and I know a lot of people are finding this elsewhere, that the Green vote is growing massively on the basis that we have Keir Starmer, who is a real centrist, hasn't really opposed Boris Johnson much at all, and he's not a particularly inspiring leader. Now, I wasn't a fan of everything Jeremy Corbyn did, but I will say that his ability to motivate people to go out and campaign and support, which is one of the fundamental functions of a political party, was exceptionally good. And I think that people don't really, I think people don't really think about that enough. And a lot of those disaffected Labour voters now who go, Keir Starmer doesn't represent that, they're going, well, at least in local elections, I'm going to vote Green or an independent, or and there's all sorts of different local parties cropped up as well. So there's like a left-wing party in the northeast called the Northern Independence Party, and they are like a left-leaning party that wants to sort of challenge Labour's traditional complacency with working class voters in the northeast. So England is one thing because that's all. It's like it's first past the post council elections. In the Senedd in Wales and in the Scottish Parliament, it's more complicated. And Scotland's particularly complicated because almost all the constituencies will go to the SNP, and that's critical because of the issue of independence. The list votes. I think, although I'm campaigning in the local council elections in England, I'm more interested somehow in the Scottish Parliament elections because there's a lot more at stake, I would say. Like, I think constitutionally it's much more profound because the Greens there are pro-independence, as are Greens across the UK are generally pro-self-determination. So it's likely there will be another independent supermajority between the different independents supporting parties. So that is another one to watch. And again, in the Senedd in Wales, it'd be interesting to see how Plaid Cymru does. And again, the Greens there might pick up their first seat, but also abolish the Welsh Assembly, which isn't, and it's not even called the Welsh Assembly, which means it's hilarious that their party is called that. They are standing as well. So it's like, there's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. I'm sorry, I've just dumped a load of information on you there.
Lots of stuff there. One thing that was brought up by a member of my community was in Scotland, I can't remember what they call themselves, the Scottish Family Party or whatever. So effectively pro-life, looks like very much like pro-white culture, effectively.
Yeah.
It's effectively like a far-right party in sheep's clothing. There's some worry that they might gain a foothold in Scotland.
Personally, from talking to my friends campaigning in Scotland, I think that it's really easy to turn what you see on social media as interpreting that as what's happening on the ground. My perception is that actually, I think that they don't have much traction. And the reason for that, you can find lots of reasons ideologically, but ultimately it is actually to do with campaigning. The success of the Green Party's rise, I mean, definitely you have to have the right atmosphere, you have to have the right mood, but it's mainly due to campaign techniques where you have year-round work. So you put leaflets through people's doors throughout the year, monthly newsletters, and you then during election time you really make sure that you are securing your vote, and it's being really organized. And that is what the left often lacks, is organization. The Scottish Family Party doesn't have infrastructure. It doesn't have that basis to successfully gain a foothold. If it gained a seat via the list, it would be able to retain that, and it would have to have enough of a vote in one region. The thing about that system is that because the list vote is not across Scotland, it's a list within each region, so that they would have to have a significant proportion of the vote in one specific part of Scotland. Now, if they're polling at like 1%, maybe even less, then that means that in order to win a seat, they've got to have all of that 1% in one region. And I just don't see that materializing. I think this is the problem that quite a lot of small parties have, is that they focus their identity very much on quite big issues, but actually elections start being won when you start with local and you build upwards. Like that's how most political parties develop, is it starts from a local issue. Often, like for example, like an issue with workers' rights or a trade dispute or a green space or something like that, and it's a catalyst for local action. So I think when we look at Twitter, we see these debates and arguments, and it's really easy to magnify. Like you get that with Alba, which is the breakaway a tiny bit of the SNP that's broken away. They are very transphobic for a start, but also I think they overstate their support. They will get certain percentage of votes, but it won't be as big as I think they reckon, because Twitter has got the polarized views, but it hasn't got what people on the doorstep are saying. And I think you'll find that when you door knock, what you tend to get is people say, I'm Labour, but this time I'm voting. I'm Tory, but this time I'm voting. I'm in Scotland, but I'm SNP. And until a party cracks identity, where people start to identify as a voter of that party, it's hard to gain a foothold. In Exeter, the Green Party, we're just starting to do that now, where people will say I'm Green at the start of the sentence rather than I am Labour, but this time I voted Green. It takes years to do that. So we should be wary of these parties. We shouldn't underestimate them, but we shouldn't expect success just yet. We should work to ensure that the parties and politicians we support are getting support on the ground so that their message is embedded in identity and not just something that materializes at the election.
All right, Joe, lots to be paying attention to. I'm sort of looking forward to our next chat. I'm like thinking ahead. What should we be tracking? What are we going to be looking back at and mentioning? Obviously, we'll be revisiting that a little bit. How did the family party in Scotland do? What else are we going to be looking back to next time we talk? Obviously, just the outcomes of these elections, but generally speaking, the ramifications of those elections and what we could look forward to, and it'll be interesting to see what evolves. I don't know, what should we be thinking about, chatting about next time we talk?
So I think so you can sort of treat them as two sets of elections, because there's the elections that should have happened last year and there are the elections that were meant to happen this year. Now, the elections, because of COVID, now the elections that are meant to happen this year are primarily county council elections. Now, they are mainly Tory controlled because they're rural counties. So what will be interesting is what kind of backlash there is against the Tories, if any, or whether they strengthen their base. So that's one thing to watch, is the county council results. Same with police and crime commissioner elections. The Tories would expect to do well because they generally right-wing parties hold quite a strong base around issues of crime and justice, even if that doesn't reflect the majority public opinion. It's some reason people still put their faith in that. So I would say be looking to see how the Tories do. The Metro Mayor elections will be interesting as well. Most of them, so some of the northern ones, there's a really interesting, this is so different to what it would have been 10 years ago, is will the Tories take some of these Metro Mayor elections from Labour? Will they, continue their advancement amongst the working class, or will Labour take those back? And then there's a couple where it's interesting to watch because they're potentially outcomes other than Tory and Labour. So Bristol, its mayoral election it's between Labour and Green, so it could be very interesting to have the first major city with a Green mayor. And London is likely to be between Labour and Tory, but again, because of the system where it's first and second preferences, if the Tories poll particularly badly, there's a very outside chance, and it is very small, that someone else, like, for example, the Green Sian Berry or Louisa Porritt, the Lib Dem, much less likely, could win on second preferences. But again, those are very far-fetched. The main thing I think to watch, is Scotland's the makeup. If we're getting a majority, if the SNP get a majority on their own, that is hugely significant. Because it's another, even if Boris Johnson says it's not, in the eyes of many is a mandate for another referendum, because that was the mandate last time. And if that's topped up by another 10 or 11 Green MSPs, which would be double the number they got in 2016, then you've got a huge pro-independence, and that just shows further divergence from Scotland and England. I think also it'd be interesting to see the number of seats that are won by different parties, because last time the Lib Dems and the Greens won record numbers of seats, but that was in the hundreds. What will be interesting to see is, have they consolidated that since last time? Have they done enough work to go from 1 to 2 to 3? Have they expanded their base enough in those areas? Because if they have, then we should be seeing, instead of gains of hundreds, potentially, in the Greens case, it's possible we'll get another 300, up to 300 more council seats, which would be double what we currently have. So I think basically what happens to the Labour and the Tories, are they going to be punished, or are they going to be, are people going to return to them? And in Scotland, are the SNP going to, have a majority, which is, and will there be a pro-independence majority? So yeah.
All right. Looks like we have our homework. We know what to be looking forward to. Joe, I think this is a great time to wrap it up, just because we've hit on lots of important things. We've planted many seeds that we're going to be able to return to next time. Joe, this is such a fun chat. Really loved getting to know you, hearing your story a little bit, and then and next time we chat again, we're going to ditch the format. We'll just be able to dig in a little bit more free form and just continue the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to be covering the elections live on my channel on Friday as well. It's quite early for you. It's from 10 a.m. UK time, so you have to work that back. It's probably about 4 a.m. start for you. But I'll be still going probably until it's going to be about 10 hours at least of streaming, because so if people want to keep up to date, or they want to pop in quickly and see what the situation is, I will be there. Awesome. With a map. Yeah. I'll be doing the full shebang. So yeah, and I'll be trying to speak to campaigners on the ground as well. So hopefully when we chat, I'll be able to get a picture from beyond my own experience and see what other people's experiences of the campaign have been as well. So yeah.
Well, Joe, thank you for your time. We invited you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is a pleasure. Mm-hmm. We invited you in the spirit of building leftist unity, strength, and power. You were a wonderful guest. Really looking forward to our next chat, and I hope you stay well and safe and be healthy, etc. Yeah.
Thank you. Likewise, solidarity.
All right. Peace and solidarity. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Yeah.
Great interview. It should say great success, but it says fail. Great success. That was Joe J. Levy. Make sure you follow Joe J. Levy here on the Twitch. Hey, YouTube. You're watching a clip from my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/iDanSimpson, where you can follow for free and subscribe for only $5 a month. Thanks for watching.